This is Chuck Carlson of We Hold These Truths, and we're presenting our Speak Out program tonight, which is entitled Enemies of the State. Our speaker tonight will be Craig Hanson, who's going to give us a report on the annual meeting of a huge organization called the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. This meeting was in Washington, D.C. on March 2 and 3, the day before the Democrat convention took place on what was called Super Tuesday. Well, Craig is the West Coast director of We Hold These Truths activities. He has organized many vigils at churches in California. He's a frequent speaker on our programs and is considered one of our directors. These programs in California that he's conducted are called vigils. Craig always carries a strong Christian message wherever he goes. And we're proud to have him with us tonight to tell us about the significance of the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee meeting, which he has studied. And it's called, of course, AIPAC for short. And dozens of speakers were there, almost amazing number of speakers at this two-day meeting. Several were representatives of our president and of candidates running for president, all of whom talked to the AIPAC crowd, which Craig will describe to us. You'll fill us in on the significance of what went on there and why he calls his talk Enemies of the State. Greg, you always teach us, so do it again.
Okay. Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, it was. I didn't check my blood pressure before and after watching AIPAC. I really should have. That could have been a sidebar to our talk tonight. But I chose the title for this week's We Hold These Truths Speak Out as Enemies of the State after watching the speeches of Vice President Mike Pence and the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo at the recent AIPAC convention. And that's you went over some of the people that were there. You just go to AIPAC, .com, and you can just see the laundry list. It's anybody who's the who's who of Washington D.C. Political establishment. They are there to speak. And why I think it's going to become obvious why I said enemies of the state, because basically you, me, and anybody who speaks out against Zionism, we are now enemies of the state. And so this is only going to get worse. I think this is one of the first salvo shots of the hard right Israeli firsters that towards us, and we're going to see more control and constriction to our free speech. But anyway, let me just keep on going. Like you mentioned, Chuck, AIPAC stands for American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And this is from their website. And it says, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee is a lobbying group that advocates pro-Israel policies to the Congress and executive branch of the United States. End quote. That's right on their website. And I really think if you to spell it properly, it should be an Israeli Political Action Committee. That's what it is. It's a political action committee. It's not a public affairs committee. Like we're just going to learn about public affairs, and isn't this really nice? No, it's a political action committee that is bending politicians to their will. And what's really interesting is I think it should be forced to be registered as a foreign agent under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And this act is called FARA, F-A-R-A. It was enacted in 1938, and FARA requires certain agents of foreign principals who are engaged in public disclosure, in public or political activities or other activities specified under the statute to make periodic public disclosure of their relationship with the foreign principal, as well as activities, receipts, and disbursements in support of those activities. Disclosure of the required information facilitates evaluation by the government and the American people of the activities of such persons in light of their functions as foreign agents. Okay, that's off the Department of State Foreign Agents Registration Act webpage. And it's the part that I really loved about that is that they have to make known a public disclosure of the receipts and disbursements, where the money's coming in, where it's going out, what they're doing. But it's really interesting that AIPAC, they fought off many challenges to be registered as a foreign agent. And the first one was under the Eisenhower administration in 1950s, and also in 1962, when Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, he also tried to get AIPAC. And that time it was called the American Zionist Council, but it was what AIPAC rolled into. So there's two attempts, one in the 50s and one in the 1962, to get AIPAC registered as a foreign agent, because that indeed is what they are. They are a foreign agent representing Israel, trying to gain influence over our political system. Have we heard something about foreign political interference? The big deal about the Russians, but Israel's been doing this, basically since their statehood. Anyway, to continue, so we've got the 50s and 62, and then they changed their name. But also in 1988 and in 2005, they were challenged again to have to register as a foreign agent. But with the power and the might that AIPAC has, nothing ever came of it. So they're still going on as the Public Affairs Committee. What I would like to focus on tonight are the comments made by Vice President Pence and Secretary of State Pompeo, because both of those guys, both Pence and Pompeo, made it very clear that if you or I oppose the atheistic, secular, racist, apartheid state of Israel, they say we are anti-Semitic and are in violation of the State Department regulations. And I'm going to give some of the quotes from the speech. And by the way, these speeches, they can be found either on C-SPAN, you can watch them then, or the whitehouse.gov website. You can go there and find the speech of Mike Pence off the whitehouse.gov website. Okay, so here's first. The first is the quote from Mike Pence. And I really encourage you to go, if you can stomach it, go and watch it, because it is so clear that this man is on a mission. He is so hardcore Zionist. He makes no distinction between what God's telling him to do and the children of Israel. My faith, I'm doing this because of my faith, and he's hardcore Zionist. Anyway, this is the quote. But now, my friends, we've reached a fateful moment in our history. All over the world, anti-Semitism is on the rise, on college campuses, in the marketplace, even in the halls of Congress. Anti-Semitism is a unique hatred, uniquely potent, persistent, uniquely responsible for unconscionable acts of violence, which is why we must root anti-Semitism out from every part of our society. It's not just a threat to Jewish Americans and Jews around the world. It is a threat to us all. Applause, 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 and cheers. But, and this is continuing, but like the vile ideology that is anti-Semitism, it has changed form in recent days. No longer does it give vent to hatred of the Jewish religion or hatred of the Jewish people on every occasion. It now often propagates as simply hatred of the state of Israel. So let me be clear about one point. It is the position of the United States government that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Applause, 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 applause. So that's the little piece from from Pence. So what does the State Department actually say? You know, because he's saying if you criticize Israel, you're in violation of the State Department. It's a position of the government. Well, the Department of State has used a working definition along with examples of anti-Semitism since 2010. And on May 26th of 2016, the 31 member states of, now listen to this organization, it's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Okay, that's the name of the group that's defining what anti-Semitism is, okay, in which the United States is a member, and they adopted a non-legally binding working definition. So in their document, it says non-legally binding of what anti-Semitism is. And this was done in Bucharest, Hungary. Okay, this definition is consistent with and builds upon information contained in the 2010 State Department definition. As a member of IHRA, the United States now uses this working definition and has encouraged other governments and international organizations to use it as well. So here's the definition, and they're putting it out to everybody. So here's examples. This is from the actual website of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. This is some of the examples they use for anti-Semitism. Accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. I have to just say right there, a great book to read is called The Holocaust Industry. And it's, if you even question the 6 million number or whatever, if you question anything about it, you're going to get labeled as an anti-Semite. In fact, in Germany, you can end up like Ernst Zundel. You end up dying in prison because of the speech. Anyway, back on. Another one example of the anti-Semitism is denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination. Example, by claiming the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. Oh, so if you deny the Jews self-determination, you're anti-Semitic. But if you deny the Palestinians a right of self-determination, what are you then? And they're Semitic, so are you anti-Semite, or I don't know. But it's anyway. I'll keep going here. Number 3 of their examples: using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism. Example: claims of Jews killing Jesus or blood libel to characterize Israel or Israelis. So if my Bible says the Jews murdered Christ, and I say, I'm reading my Bible, is the Bible now an anti-Semitic book because that's what the Bible says? Okay. Another example they use, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. Gaza is a ghetto, run little Semitism, killing innocent people, uprooting them from their lands. Is there any comparison there? But if you make that comparison, you're anti-Semitic. And the last example, anti-Semitic acts are criminal when they are so defined by law. So all it takes is to take this working definition, put it into a law, like we're seeing these anti-BDS laws coming around the country. And so if you support BDS, now you're an anti-Semite because it's already codified into law. Okay, so what happens with all this? Well, if you equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism and apply existing laws against anti-Semitism to anti-Zionism, and voila, no more criticism of Israel, right? Because if you open your mouth, you're going to be guilty of anti-Semitism. So effectively, it just stops and stifles the free speech that's guaranteed in our Constitution, First Amendment, which says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. That's the First Amendment. And this also from Vice President Pence. Quote, and President Trump has repeatedly done what no American president before him has had the courage to do, like when he recognized Israel's sovereignty of the Golan Heights. Applause, applause. Like when he rejected half a century of peace process dogma and proclaimed that Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank are not illegal. Applause, applause, applause. I'm going to get into the illegal settlements a little bit later, but you kind of see where this is going. And this, leaving Pence behind for right now, I would go to Mike Pompeo. And the people, if you just listen, it's the same over and over again. Undying support for Israel, bipartisan, ... It just goes on and on and on. It's just different face, same message. Okay, this is from Mike Pompeo, our Secretary of State. Because religious freedom sits at the core of our founding, it is in our Bill of Rights as the very first freedom, which I just read, the central freedom that all others who enjoy here in America are built. And it is because I am a champion of that religious freedom that I am here today to tell you the United States stands with the Jewish people and Israel in the fight against the world's oldest bigotry. Clap, clap, clap. This bigotry is taking on an insidious new form in the guise of anti-Semitism. It has infested college campuses in the form of the BDS movement. It is discussed in our media, supported by some members of Congress. I suspect many of whom are not here tonight. Laughter. Don't get me wrong. Criticizing Israel's policies is something you have a right to do. Really? But criticizing the very right for Israel to exist is not acceptable. Clap. Anti-Zionism denies the very legitimacy of the Israeli state and of the Jewish people. Does it? Zionism reflects the determination of the Jews to live as free people in their ancestral homeland. It grows out of the Jewish faith. Zionism was born in the Old Testament, crystallized in the 19th century under Theodor Herzl, and was crystallized again in 1948 with the establishment of the modern state of Israel. And yet today, only one country of the 192 United Nations has its right to exist, routinely questioned. So, friends, let me go on record. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Cheers and applause. We live in dangerous times. We have to speak the truth. Anti-Semitism should and must be rejected by all decent people. Anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and any nation that espouses anti-Semitism, like Iran, must be confronted. We must defend the right for a homeland of the Jewish people. We must see to it that the old dreams of Moses, of Herzl, of America's poet laureate Emma Lazarus, who wrote the words inscribed in our Statue of Liberty, never fade. And as Secretary of State and as a Christian, I am proud to lead American diplomacy to support Israel's right to defend itself, and I am proud to stand with the Jewish people and to champion the cause of religious liberty in Israel and in America. Applause, cheers, and applause. Okay, that's it from those two guys. I've got more. Check. Go ahead, ask some questions. We'll just see where you want to go with this.
Okay. First, I'd like to ask, what was there any discussion of the American presidential elections that went on at the AIPAC meetings? What did they have to say about, for instance, the candidacy in the Democrat Party of Bernie Sanders? Was his name mentioned, or?
Oh yes, is
tell us a little about that. And then
let's see if I can. I've got a quote here. Somebody, I can find it on the screen here. But yes, he was spoken, and which is really interesting because he lived in Israel. He is Jewish, and he boycotted AIPAC. And let's see. I don't know if I can find it here. What did I do with it? Yeah, but he's Bernie has been pretty vocal about AIPAC, and he calls them racist, and it's just not conducive to peace. If you just do a Google search on Bernie Sanders AIPAC, yeah, it's pretty potent. You know what he said about that. Yeah.
He refused to come to the AIPAC meeting, did he not?
Yes, he did.
He stated as his reason that they denied the Palestinian people of their rights, their human rights they have to life, liberty, and so on.
Exactly. Ask some more questions, and I'll get into some of what David Friedman, who is our ambassador to Israel, what he had to say. But if you have any other questions, go ahead and ask away.
Well, the election, the primary election called Super Tuesday, took place the day after the AIPAC meeting on the 4th, I believe 4th of March. And at that meeting, there was a overwhelming charge against Bernie Sanders' candidacy.
Oh, yes.
And it appears that the entire Democratic machine was suddenly organized to defeat him, to keep him from getting electors.
Yeah, I really think what we're seeing is it's the first ballot, because Bernie's not going to get enough votes for the first ballot, and so by Klobuchar and Buttigieg going out, throwing their support to Biden, it's going to, neither one of them are going to get the 1991 or whatever it takes to win on the first ballot. Then that opens up the whole super delegate thing, which is about as undemocratic as you could possibly get. And then we'll see where it goes. You know, will it all go to Biden? Will Hillary step up? Will Michelle Obama step up? Or will Chuck Carlson step up? You know, who's going to be the Democratic nominee? We don't know. But I think it's going to be it's the fix is in. The fix is in, and of course, you know, Tulsi Gabbard, you know, did not get any press at all, because she is pro-peace. She's the anti-war machine, and you know, she did not even get to first base with any of the media. But hey, I did find what Bernie said. Let's see here. Bernie's been an outspoken critic of the Israel treatment of Palestinians and derided Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as, quote, a racist during the Democratic debate in December. Quote, the Israeli people have the right to live in peace and security. So do the Palestinian people. I remain concerned about the platform AIPAC provides for leaders who express bigotry and oppose basic Palestinian rights. For that reason, I will not attend their conference. As president, I will support the rights of both Israelis and Palestinians and do everything possible to bring peace and security to the region. So there it is. That's what Bernie had to say.
This resulted in open condemnation.
Oh, absolutely.
Bernie Sanders. So
yes,
very easily say that this is an official Israeli government operation. And they come right into our elections and are tampering with our presidential elections.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question. And why people? Well, people see it, but the media is controlled by the same people that want this whole thing to go on. So it's not going to. It's people like us and if other independent sources that can look into this and see what's going on. Anyway, go ahead.
The best example of this is the candidacies of billionaire or multimillionaire or whatever, Michael Bloomberg, who is a prominent candidate in the Democrat Party, even though he is a industrial magnate in New York State and the former mayor of New York City. And he joined the race just before the Super Tuesday event, and spent unfathomable amount of money defeating Bernie Sanders. He happens to be Jewish. He happens to be very prominent
Yes.
in AIPAC and in the other Jewish organizations. And he essentially came in and organized a campaign that he funded himself with literally hundreds of millions of dollars, $100 million plus dollars, I understand.
Yeah, well, it was interesting, Chuck. I just heard today that Bloomberg spent $5 per vote. That's what he spent was $5 per vote to get that.
So what we have here is we have a powerful influence going on within our own government, controlling and influencing elections in the name of civil rights of the Israeli people.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make another observation. The number of mercenaries, U.S. military mercenaries fighting on the side of the U.S. government or participating in military acts on the side of the U.S. government in the Middle East is something like 20,000 troops. Mm-hmm. These men are not even known to be on our they're not on the payroll of the United States government. Mm-hmm. They're on the payroll of private fighting organizations, killing organizations, mm-hmm. that are known as contractors. And so you hear the word contractors. Recently, the Iranian government dropped a bomb on a U.S. military base in Iraq and killed 4 people. And the news came out and said that all 4 of the people killed were contractors. So they weren't United States military men. They were essentially private contractors or mercenary killers, to put it another way, working for a contracting company that the American people know nothing about. Mm-hmm. So not only do we have AIPAC coming in here and trying to influence our elections, but at the same time, we have our government hiring military contractors with tens of thousands of people hired, some of whom are not even Americans, and they're carrying out military operations in all the places where they're carrying out paramilitary operations in all the places where we have these so-called wars going on, these killing operations that are not thought of as wars. How does AIPAC stand on things like that? This is another secret, just like the secret that AIPAC is participating in our elections.
Yeah. The interesting thing, Chuck, on that, when you were talking about a bomb, when the assassination of Soleimani got mentioned, and it got mentioned through many different speeches, the crowd went wild. You know, it's like this bloodlust. You know, any enemy of Israel is my enemy. And it's definitely not a peace organization. It is defending Israel at all costs. Before we run out of time, I'd like to get a couple points from what David Friedman has to say, because it was the Trump peace plan was David Friedman, the ambassador to the UN or Israel, our ambassador to Israel, Jared Kushner, and Greenblatt. You know, those 3 guys put this plan together, and so that did come up a little bit, but definitely you can find Friedman's speech on YouTube. You can just type in David Friedman at AIPAC, and you get his 22-minute speech. And a couple things, you know, it's how we do this. We hold these truths. We start pulling threads. Where does this go? Where does this go? And you just follow the lead back, and that's why we believe what we believe, and what the Bible says, and how the nation of Israel is a repudiation of God's judgment on Israel in 70 AD, and you know, God was done with the nation of Israel, and so this thing that's over there in the Middle East does not have God's blessing on it. It's a total man-made atheistic operation. But anyway, I'm going to go to a couple things what Friedman said, talking about the peace plan. He said that goes back to I hear that chair. Trump recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. What gives Trump that power to recognize Israel's sovereignty? Like, so what? And Friedman and also Greenblatt, and there was 2 or 3 others that said the settlements, the Israeli settlements in the West Bank are not illegal. And it goes back, and UN Resolution 2334, which the United States did not veto, and that was under, I guess, under the Obama administration, which basically said that these Israeli settlements are illegal in the West Bank. We didn't veto it, and of course, the whole Jewish community were all upset about that. But when Friedman is talking about the peace plan, listen to this: the area, they allocate areas based on the size of the population. So, okay, we've taken away, we've shipped out, and all the Palestinians, they've been put in refugee camps and so forth and so on. So the land size is going to be based on the population. And they talk about a 4-year runway to Palestinian statehood. But listen to this: the territorial integrity of the potential state will be preserved, Chuck. So, hey, guess what? We've taken away 85% of your country, but guess what? For 4 years, we're not going to take any more. And if you're good boys and girls, you're going to get to keep, your 20% of the land that we deem that you should have. And it just goes on and on. But I see we're past the 30-minute mark, and I don't want to go long here. But it's quite an event to watch and to see these people grovel. And I think she's the president of AIPAC or whatever. She was talking about how as a child she learned chess and how to outwit the competition and about the chess game. And it's so interesting that AIPAC can't lose. They fund the Republicans and they fund the Democrats. So no matter who wins, Israel first. And so many times I heard bipartisan support, bipartisan consensus. They talked about it over and over and over again. So, our tax dollars, which they authorize, goes over to Israel, and it comes back through AIPAC and supports campaigns of people that are going to support Israel. That generates the funds that go back to Israel. And politicians, their number one job is to get reelected. And the way you get reelected is you go to AIPAC and you do, yes, ma'am. How far, how high do you want me to jump? And they do it. It was one interesting question. In a little 4 women were talking. They asked if they saw bipartisan support eroding, and there was kind of a thing. Well, yeah, maybe it is, because there's a very strong movement in the Democratic Party that's to say enough of this. That this Israel first thing is not going to last. So I think that's exactly why you're going to see Bernie, pushed aside, and he's not going to get anywhere. Anyway,
one thought: the Israelis are influencing our elections.
Absolutely,
because in the latest election, there was a candidate who said he was not on Israel's side when it came to their policies, practices, and their warring acts against the Palestinian people. And there's another party and the other party who said he's absolutely for everything the state of Israel does. And Israel just went in and manipulated within the Democrat Party to make sure that Bernie Sanders, the guy who was stated he had questions about Israel, could not be elected.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, we're going to have a walk-in now by President, the current president, who basically has stated that he will support Israel in every way, including the ways you've mentioned. So we have a manipulation going on of our presidential politics. Mike Pompeo closed his statement by saying, "All men are made in the image of God."
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that statement means to an Israeli?
Well, it's like all men are created equal, but some are just more equal. That's kind of how it comes across with the Talmudic Judaism. So that's a whole nother issue. But anyway, Chuck, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present this, and hopefully I can take a deep breath and my blood pressure will come down a little bit after listening to all this. But it is just so sad because there's so much that never gets exposed. You know, like the attack on the USS Liberty during the 6-Day War, the Darshin massacre by the Zionist terrorists in 1948, 47. You know, all of those things never get discussed. And you have to pull the thread back to what formed, you know, Zionism, where it is today, and how it got to be where it is today. And you know, it is the control of our government, which is, we need to take it back.
Thank you, Craig. You've been listening to Craig Hanson of We Hold These Truths, talking about the annual meeting of the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee in Washington, D.C., the day before the election that took place on Super Tuesday. And thank you, Craig, very much for this very thoughtful presentation, very thorough. We know that it'll be very helpful for our people. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. This is Chuck Carlson signing off.
Good night.